All right, so we're gonna be working on teaching that cue to touch the cone again. Again, he wants to kind of touch it. He just sees it and he wants to touch it. That's all right. I should probably ask him to back up here. Instead, there we go. Instead, I was cueing the default. You can see there he was kind of in the way, and then I just kind of waited, and then I just fed him back. So that's another way to do it too. That works. Um, but I probably could have set it up a little bit better so that the cone was a little bit further away. So I didn't want to just ignore him trying to do that. I wanted to offer him to do a different behavior instead. So now I'll ask him to touch the cone. He was a lot faster that time than in the last video. He was quite a bit slower. He took a minute to get to it. And I think most of that was just him chewing. So I kind of wait a little bit longer here. Click him for standing in default. Here's my cue again. Standing in default. I like that. This looks really good. Go ahead and touch the cone. Yeah, a lot less latency there. So he's responding to my cue a lot faster. I'm going to feed him back. There he takes a step back. So I'm just extending my arm out toward his chest. I'm not withholding. I'm just holding it there. Once he steps back, my hand will open and he can have his treat. Here, I wasn't asking for this. He's like, oh, look, I can touch the cone. So probably could have asked him to back up there. Instead, I was still asking for the standing default. And I think that was a little bit harder for him because I'm asking for him for a different behavior too close to the cone. So I probably there should have asked for the backup and then the default so that I could position him away from the cone so he's less tempted to touch it in the first place. So staying default, cue to touch cone. He takes his, I don't know if he actually touched the cone there, but he did take a couple steps to get to it. There we go. Um, so overall looks pretty good. Little tweaks I could make here or there, but nothing crazy. Like I probably could have asked him for another step back there just so he's just less tempted to get to it. He stands nicely and then touches the cone on cue. Perfect. So now I'm starting to combine the two behaviors. So I asked him to stand in default, so like right here, he stands for a few seconds. And then like the last time I asked him to touch the cone. So I'm gonna mix that up with asking him to go default and then go to touch the cone like here. So I'm kind of reinforcing both behaviors by only doing the last one. So he kind of has to do the standstill and then touch the cone on cue and then get reinforcement. But I do make sure that I reinforce just the standing still separately as well, just to keep that in there. And then later on you can fade that out, but I want to make sure that that's really, really solid. There, I'm asking him to touch it. Perfect. And then I should feed him back here. So my arm's just out extended toward his chest so that it has him create some space between himself and the cone. And that way, like, it just kind of works out. Like, he can go get his food for the getting the touch, and he creates some space so he's less tempted to touch that cone. So get same thing here. Create some space. He follows that food back. That's also a really good thing to do while leading, so you can put them in the correct position. And the horse usually takes only a couple times to figure that out, and they'll just follow wherever your hand is. I wouldn't do more than a couple steps, though, so they're not getting frustrated. So ask him again to touch the cone. Again, he's doing it much quicker than he did in the last session, so he's really catching on. I feed him back. I cue him for staying default. Reinforce after a few seconds, and then there's kind of a lot going on because I'm trying to give him a little jackpot while I take that away. I'm gonna get my handheld target, but there's a lot because I gotta think about, okay, how many seconds do I want him to stand in default? And then am I going to go ahead and ask him to touch the cone afterward, or am I going to reinforce and kind of like, okay, what did I do last time? So there's a lot of details going on that you have to plan. I like to have a planner and I write out what I'm going to do, and then after the session I write out what I actually did because it's kind of always a little bit different than the plan, but it helps keep me on track. And I'm pretty detailed about it too. So it'll be like Atlas stood for 10 seconds in default, and then he touched the cone and he did it so many times. But I'm just asking him to follow the handheld target back. Again, he already kind of knows how to do this. We're just kind of refining it a little bit. So he doesn't necessarily follow it with his nose, which is something I would like, but we can work on that later. But I'm just going to end the session again with a nice big jackpot so that I'm not taking the food away when I leave.